William Blake is a mercurial presence in the history of art, at once poet, printmaker, visionary, and solitary radical. He did not fit the neat categories of his day. His pages combined hand-printed color, engraved line, and verse into intimate books that read like private revelations. Blake's figures are charged with an electric anatomy of the soul, godlike geometer, red dragons, prophets, and fugitives, all moving through landscapes of light and flame. Today, we'll follow the strange coherence behind his seeming strangeness, how songs of innocence and experience, his prophetic books like Urizen and Europe, his book of job engravings, and paintings such as the Ancient of Days or the Great Red Dragon grew from a single restless imagination. Expect close attention to technique, his relief etching, tempera on mahogany, visionary heads, and to the curious stories behind works that have haunted artists, writers, and architects for 2 centuries. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps us keep creating more educational videos like this one. William Blake was born in London in 1757, the son of a hosier, and showed drawing talent early. He studied briefly at the Royal Academy, but resisted its classical prescriptions. Instead, he apprenticed to an engraver and developed a private workshop practice. Portraits and self-portraits from life show a man often described as introverted and intense, yet he cultivated friendships. John Linnell, John Varley, and the patron Thomas Butts, who preserved many of his drawings and notebooks. These intimate images and sketches are crucial. They record not only likeness, but the posture of Blake's imagination, the way he observed faces, hands, and the tilt of vision that later became emblems in his prophetic myths. Blake's working methods are central to understanding his art. He printed many of his books himself using relief etching, a process he called illuminated printing, which let him fuse text and image on a single plate. That allowed radical control over color, line, and composition, and meant each copy could be hand-finished. Look closely at plates from Europe, A Prophecy, and the first book of Urizen. You see Blake's etched outlines, a luminous watercolor wash, and a calligrapher's sensitivity to spacing. He also practiced tempera and gold on wood for small, jewel-like paintings, the ghost of a flea, for example, and experimented with monoprint-like techniques for works such as Newton. Across media, Blake treated the page as a theater where word and line acted together. Blake's so-called prophetic books, Urizen, the Book of Loss, America and Europe, A Prophecy, Milton and Jerusalem, are not historical narratives but personal mythologies. Urizen embodies law, restrictive reason, a figure who binds and measures. Loss, by contrast, is creative labor and imagination, the blacksmith of poetic form. Europe, A Prophecy responds to revolutionary Europe with jagged, urgent figures. Milton rewrites the life of the poet as a cosmic drama. Plates from these books show recurring motifs, the measuring compass, collapsing architectures, and bodies stretched in ecstatic or agonized curves. Blake's prophets are psychological archetypes as much as literary characters, maps of what he called the contraries inside human life. Blake's illustrated books, especially his illustrations to the Book of Job, to the Book of Revelation, and to Dante and Chaucer, demonstrate a different intensity. Here, his imagination meets canonical scripture and classic literature. The Job series contains nightmarish, whirling visions and a remarkable economy of line, while his superb Great Red Dragon paintings rework apocalyptic imagery into a muscular, almost sculptural crimson beast. In the Body of Abel found by Adam and Eve, Blake treats the biblical family scene as a study in grief and physiognomy. These illustrations marry Blake's theological questioning with a painterly bravura. The dragon's scale and the cadaver's pale skin are painted with equal psychological penetration. In the final decades, Blake reported encounters with visionary heads, a sequence of painted or drawn faces he said were revealed to him. That visionary register also includes the ghost of a flea, an unsettling tempera that exemplifies Blake's ability to make the grotesque strangely human. Late portraits and self-portraits show an artist still probing identity and perception. He drew himself repeatedly in notebooks and rendered figures who are part portrait, part allegory. Friends like John Linnell later preserved and copied these works, so our sense of Blake's later visual practice comes through a network of originals, counterproofs, and reproductions. What defines Blake's style? First, a rhetorical body language, Figures are elongated, often shown in contorted, classical poses, but animated by a graphic calligraphy of muscle and sinew. Second, color used not for optical realism but as moral and emotional signal. The golden compass in the Ancient of Days is not mere ornament, but a symbolic instrument of divine measurement. Third, an insistence on synthesis. His prints, paintings, and poems collapse categories, forcing the viewer to read image as speech. Works like Pity or the Canterbury Pilgrims reveal a compassionate attention to human gesture. The Ten Virgins and his biblical work reveal Blake's lifelong concern with innocence, experience, judgment, and empathy. Blake's reception history is a study in delayed recognition. During his life, he was marginalized, selling few large paintings, but admired by a circle of supporters and later rediscovered by the Romantics and the Pre-Raphaelites. In the 19th and 20th centuries, his images influenced writers, painters, and even architects. The Ancient of Days has been quoted in design and public decoration, and Blake in imagery resurfaces in modern poetry and popular culture. His freedom from academic orthodoxy, his fusion of text and image, and his fearless myth-making have made him a perennial figure for those who prize art that thinks as fiercely as it looks. To return to Blake's core, he wanted art and poetry to act like revelation, to overturn complacency, and to re-enchant perception. He refused to separate the sacred from the immediate, the visionary from the everyday workshop. That is why the Ancient of Days can sit beside a tempera like the ghost of a Flea and make equal demand on our attention, why his illuminated books remain indivisible objects of wonder, and why the great red dragon still seems to breathe. Blake asks us not only to see, but to imagine differently, to hold opposites together, and to recognize that creativity itself is the soul's necessary labor. Listen to his images as you might a poem, not for easy answers, but for the stubborn insistence of wonder.